The night was colder than Ethan had ever known. The wind cut across the barren ice fields, whistling through broken stone and frozen ridges. He pulled his worn coat tighter, though the fabric had lost most of its strength long ago. His boots crunched over frost. Above him, the stars burned like tiny holes in the sky. He was far from home, farther than he had ever thought a human could be. The planet was nothing but ice, snow, and silence. It wasn't Earth, not even close. Yet sometimes as he walked, alone, he imagined the sound of a voice he once knew. That voice belonged to someone he cared about, someone who had moved away long before this frozen journey. Her name was Claire. Back on Earth, they had been close, sharing stories, laughter, and quiet moments by the fire. But when she left for another colony, everything changed. Messages had grown fewer. Calls had stopped. The distance had grown until silence filled the space between them. Now, in the endless night, Ethan felt that silence more than the cold. He kept walking until his legs ached. His supplies were low, and he knew he couldn't last many more nights out here. Still, something pulled him forward, as if each step was carrying him closer to something he didn't yet understand. That was when he found her. In the snow, half buried by drifting frost, lay a figure. Her skin was pale blue, her clothes torn, her eyes closed. She wasn't human. Her features were sharper, her hands longer, her face marked with patterns he didn't recognize. For a moment, Ethan hesitated. She was alien. And on this planet, survival meant protecting what little he had left. But then he remembered Claire. He remembered the way she had once told him, "It doesn't matter who they are. If someone needs help, you give it." So Ethan bent down and pulled the stranger from the snow. Her body was ice cold, her breaths faint. He carried her to a nearby cave, a dark shelter against the storm. Inside, he set her down. He lit a small fire with the last of his fuel, though he knew it would not last the night. He checked his bag. One bedroll. Just one. Ethan looked at the alien woman, then at the bedroll. He knew what the smart choice was. If he kept it for himself, he could last the night. If he gave it away, he might not. But humanity had never been about the smart choice. It had always been about the right one. He spread the bedroll over her fragile body, tucking it close around her. She stirred, opening her eyes just a little. They were silver, reflecting the dim firelight. She whispered something in a language he did not understand. He smiled faintly. "Rest," he said softly. "You need it more than me." The night grew colder. Ethan shivered, his teeth clattering, his body shaking. The fire shrank to glowing embers. He pulled his coat tighter, but knew it wasn't enough. He thought of Claire again, her laughter, her kindness. The memory kept him awake, but only just. Hours passed. He felt his strength fading, his mind sinking into darkness. Then, warmth touched him. The alien woman had risen. She moved close to him, her silver eyes watching. Without a word, she pressed against him, wrapping her arms around him. Her skin was warm now, almost burning. Heat radiated from her, more powerful than any flame. Ethan blinked, surprised. The warmth spread through him, pushing away the icy grip of the night. He felt his body steady, his breathing returned to normal. She spoke again, and though he could not understand her words, he understood her meaning. She was giving back what he had given her. Life for life, warmth for warmth. In that moment, Ethan felt something stir inside him. It wasn't just about survival, it wasn't just about two strangers in the cold. It was about connection, the same connection he had once shared with Claire, the same connection that made humans reach out across impossible distances. He realized then that even if Claire was far away, even if their voices no longer reached each other, the hope of reconnecting still burned. Humanity had always carried that hope. That was why they had crossed oceans, skies, and now stars. To reach one another, to never let distance win. The alien woman leaned her head against him, her warmth steady and strong. He closed his eyes and let the comfort fill him. The night passed. When the first light of dawn touched the ice outside, Ethan opened his eyes. The storm was gone. The cave was still. The alien woman was watching him quietly, a faint smile on her face. Ethan smiled back. "Thank you," he whispered. He had offered her his bedroll in the cold, and she had given him something warmer than fire. The storm had passed, but the silence it left behind was heavy. Outside the cave, snow stretched for miles, unbroken by movement or sound. The sky was pale and clear, the kind of sky that made a man feel both small and infinite. Ethan sat by the fading embers of the fire, rubbing his hands together. The warmth from the alien woman, Lyra, he would soon learn, still lingered in his bones. She sat across from him, her silver eyes calm but curious, her hands folded in her lap. He tried to speak. "I'm Ethan." He tapped his chest. "Ethan." She tilted her head, then pointed to herself. "Lyra." Her voice was soft, but the word was sharp and clear. Ethan smiled faintly. A name was a bridge. Even a small one could stretch across the largest distance. For a while they sat in silence, studying one another. Lyra touched the bedroll he had given her, then looked at him with something he could only describe as wonder. She whispered something, in her language, but he didn't need to understand. He knew what she was saying. She was asking why. Why had he chosen to risk himself for her? Ethan's gaze drifted to the mouth of the cave. Beyond the snow and the silence, far away across the stars lived the person he could not forget. Claire. He remembered the day she left. The docking bay had been crowded, voices echoing against steel walls. She had turned to him with a smile that didn't quite hide the sadness in her eyes. "I'll be back," she had said. But time had stretched long, and distance had stolen her voice. "I had someone once," Ethan whispered, though Lyra couldn't understand his words. "She moved away, and now it feels like she's gone." Lyra tilted her head, watching him with quiet attention. She reached out, hesitated, then touched his hand lightly as if to say, "I don't understand your words, but I hear your heart." Ethan swallowed hard. For the first time in months, maybe years, he felt less alone. They left the cave together when the sun rose higher, their footsteps crunching over the frozen ground. Ethan carried his pack while Lyra walked beside him, scanning the horizon. The cold was still sharp, but the presence of another soul beside him made it bearable. As they walked, Ethan thought of Claire. He thought of how much he missed her voice, her laughter, the way she had made every empty space feel alive. Distance had stolen all of that. He wondered if she thought of him too, or if the gap between them had become too wide to cross. Yet walking with Lyra reminded him of something important. Distance didn't have to be the end. Humans had always reached across distances, through seas, through skies, and now through stars. Maybe the silence wasn't forever. Maybe he could still find a way back to Claire. That hope was enough to keep him moving. As the day wore on, Lyra began to speak more, pointing to things in the snow and naming them in her language. A jagged rock, a frozen plant, a distant ridge. Ethan repeated the words clumsily, earning small smiles from her. In return, he taught her human words. When he pointed to himself and said human, she frowned, then nodded slowly. "Who, man?" Her voice lingered on the word as if testing its weight. "Human," Ethan repeated with a nod. The word became a promise between them, a sign that two different lives could find meaning together. That night, they camped near a cluster of frozen boulders. Ethan built a small fire from the scraps of fuel he still carried. Lyra sat close to him, watching the flames with wide eyes, as though fire was something rare to her. Ethan leaned back against a rock, staring at the stars. Somewhere out there was Claire. He didn't know if she was looking at the same stars, but he hoped she was. "Claire," he whispered, almost to himself. "I hope you're okay." Lyra looked at him curiously. "Claire?" she asked, repeating the word. Ethan smiled sadly. Someone I care about. Lyra nodded slowly. She didn't ask more, but the way she sat closer told him she understood. The cold deepened again that night. Ethan gave the bedroll to Lyra once more, but instead of letting him freeze, she shifted closer, sharing her warmth as she had before. Her body heat was more powerful than the fire, steady and strong. Ethan felt his sadness soften under the comfort. He still longed for Claire, still felt the ache of distance. But Lyra's presence reminded him of something essential. Even when separated, even when voices fell silent, the human heart carried its own fire, a fire that could be shared, a fire that refused to die. The days that followed blurred into a rhythm. Walk, rest, share warmth, keep moving. The bond between them grew, though their words were few. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the sky turned violet, Lyra looked at him and spoke carefully. "Who man gives?" Ethan raised his eyebrows. "Gives?" She touched the bedroll. "Gives life." Then she touched her own chest. "Lyra gives." She pressed her hand gently against his heart. Warm. Ethan's throat tightened. It wasn't perfect speech, but the meaning was clear. He had given her survival. She had given him hope. That night, lying under the stars, Ethan thought of Claire again. For so long he had believed the silence between them meant the end, but Lyra had reminded him that connection could survive even the greatest distance. That was what humanity had always done. Find hope where none should exist. Keep reaching where